We can now bring in our Brussels maestro, Dave Keating. Dave, thanks for speaking to us. Some decisions have already been made on Ukraine this morning. What are they?
Yeah, we had a meeting with the European leaders and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky earlier, and I've been giving a readout from that meeting. So President Zelensky briefed the leaders on the recent wave of Russian attacks, particularly emphasizing the attacks on civilian infrastructure. He also welcomed the adoption this morning of the 19th package of sanctions against Russia. That's the big decision that we've had already today. The real significant thing about that package is that it will, for the first time, sanction Russian liquefied natural gas, LNG. That's when gas is liquefied, put on ships, and then dropped off at a port and de-liquefied back into a gas. And Russia has been using LNG to skirt the sanctions against its pipeline gas exports in order to obfuscate the origin of the LNG. Now, that package had been blocked by Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico. Fico yielded his veto last night, ended the veto. It's not really clear what relation that might have to the announcement we got overnight, as you mentioned, that the Trump administration is for the very first time significantly sanctioning Russia with these sanctions on Russian oil companies. It may be that this was done in coordination or that this convinced Fico to drop his veto. In any event, Volodymyr Zelensky saying this morning, that he was extremely happy about both of these sets of sanctions.
Now, we've heard from you there about liquefied natural gas, but what about potential liquefied Russian assets? When is that going to be hammered out?
Yeah, that is the big question looming over this summit, and it's still really uncertain. So we're expecting a press conference from Volodymyr Zelensky shortly. He may give a bit of an indication of these discussions so far, but when it comes to this frozen assets decision, he's not going to be in the room. Right now they're having a defense lunch. They're talking about EU defense efforts, and after that they're going to go back to this topic. And from what I've heard, the Belgian Prime Minister, Bart de Wever, is still saying he's not comfortable agreeing to this because he doesn't think he has legally sound, ironclad guarantees that the liability for doing this will be spread across the EU. These frozen Russian assets are based here in Belgium in the Euroclear clearinghouse, and Belgium is pretty convinced that they're going to have a legal challenge on their hands if that money is confiscated. So they want the liability and the money for that legal challenge to be spread out across EU member states. They don't want just nice words about that right now. They want that legally in writing, and they also want every other EU country which has Russian assets, which includes neighboring Luxembourg, to also participate in this to make sure that everyone is kind of equally liable from a very literal sense. We'll see later today if the Belgian Prime Minister feels that he's been given enough certainty on that. It's actually been a little unclear what the Belgians exactly need, but in any event, we're not going to get an actual decision today. We would get a signal from the EU leaders to say, okay, European Commission, Belgium's comfortable with this now, go ahead and put out a proposal for this, and the hope is that the proposal can be adopted by the end of the year, and we can get this money flowing to Ukraine by early next year.
That all-important defence lunch you mentioned there. Politico's reporting that it's a fillet of veal with artichokes and crispy polenta. But more to the point, anything else going on in the European Council that you're keeping your eye on today?
Yeah, they're having a big discussion about competitiveness, and what this is really is a fig leaf for tearing up the EU's climate legislation. There's a big push for so-called simplification right now coming from a lot of countries. 19 of the 27 countries wrote to the Council Chair Antonio Costa before this summit saying they want the EU climate legislation that was passed in Ursula von der Leyen's first term, 2019 to 2024, to be revisited. That's the big push right now because they say that the urgent need right now is that Europe needs to be more competitive and that European companies are facing too much paperwork. Significantly, the big decision they're going to need to take today is whether they're going to go ahead with the EU's proposed 2040 emissions reduction target of 90% based on 1990 levels. They need that for the global climate summit that's happening in Brazil, in Belém, starting on November 10th. If the EU walks to that summit without this, that was supposed to be part of their global commitments, it's going to look really bad. However, the likelihood of that 2040 target being passed is looking slimmer and slimmer. The mood right now in the European Union is against climate action. We're really seeing that the EU is going backwards in terms of its efforts. And up till now, the EU has been the world leader in combating climate change and adopting the most comprehensive package of climate legislation ever seen. Now, that package is being steadily eroded, and there really is no sign that that is going to change.
Dave Keating, another great update for you. Thanks for that. Go get yourself a seat for Zelensky's address in about